Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this morning's episode. My attention has gone to the concept of the mind. I feel when it comes to knowledge, human beings are just trying to know more about how they are a physical form, and how they are an awareness, a mind in some sense. So pretty much on this planet for now, for individual embodied human beings, what we can do is progress the body or progress the mind. We know that the body is temporary because we have perceived death not in movies but in everything in life. Believe it or not, time even dies and is reborn the next day. So we have an ability to have our attention zoom in and zoom out of our body or mind. Now, I have zoomed in on the mind in a strange way, as if I am alive once and I'm trying to figure out what this whole existential intelligence is about. And I made an observation this morning that another way we can talk about the mind is that it's the second life of the person, not a dimension to the life of the person, but it is another life that is being lived. Because we can say that if a person's eyes are open and they perceive a phenomena, a physical phenomena, and now let's say a person closes their eyes and remembers a moment where they existed in a physical phenomena. That memory is like the whole moment being lived again. Now the question comes, when we remember something, where is that moment being lived? And so it is an inner life. Now, what do we do with the second life? What do we do when we have, let's say you're a human being, and for 25% of your lifetime, 29%, you have lived as an individual form. That means there has been the cultivation of a mastery of moving the biological body, moving the body in a certain way where it generates sounds, and these sounds reflect the state of mind of the being. Something that can be said about life in general, that it is experience extraction. Our intelligence allows our intelligence allows the reception of experience to take place. That means the way we know we're alive is because we're experiencing it. Now, if somebody comes and says we're living inside another dimension, a subjective dimension, in accordance to the first definition of experiencing life in accordance to the physical body. So what I'm trying to say is that imagine we don't have an idea of a mind, we're just this physical phenomenon moving. And as this physical phenomenon moves, its sensory experience changes, and in some sense it knows that it is living a physical life. Now, if we were to become aware of our non-physical life, it has to fulfill the requirement of being able to extract experience from it. That means in order to say that the human being has an inner life, the human being has to be able to close their eyes, to stop their sensory perception, and to see if they are still able to move. That means we are trying to find the depth of the free will of the conscious human being. And the depth of the free will, its roots are in the unconscious. So what that means is an inner life should be a life that has experiential value, but its experiential value is not the same as like how we experience things in the outer realms. In front of me right now, there's a table. I'm touching that table, the sensations of a physical form, an object is there. But if I was to close my eyes and imagine myself touching this table in front of me, it's as if there is no hand, there is no limbs in the imagination. The imagination is like the watcher of a screen. Now what moves on that screen becomes your inner life, right? So it's like at some point we are identifying with stuff in front of our eyes, then we're identifying with, let's say, internal objects, stuff behind our eyes, and then we reach a point where we're like, who's doing this identification from the beginning? There's a quote I've shared in the description of the talk, and it's from John Milton. It says, "The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven." You know, that means the inner life has an ability to completely transition the karma of the moment. This means that karma has to do with also the shift of the attitude of the person. All those people in spiritual traditions trying to get enlightened, it's as if they haven't, I would say a majority of people seeking truth on this planet haven't realized that the change in your attitude to be able to study the nature of how mindsets are set for you. You know, I feel every person is a unique antenna, therefore meaning they have access to unique rhythms. That means every person has a way of receiving this universal sector that no other person has. And when I say no other person has, you could put the same object in front of two people, but what that object means to them in accordance to how their inner lives have been paved and animated so far, there comes like meaning, right? So to just be aware that, this is kind of like a strange nanosecond of a guided meditation where the person's like, okay, I'm breathing in existence, and then for a moment the person wonders, but what is existence? And the concept which takes us towards an epistemological situation, what that means is we're wondering how we know things. Or what methods of knowing we have employed so far, we have used so far. For me personally, my inner life before, I would say before 2011, it was definitely a fixed story. That means every day I was waking up and I was being the same character of that inner life story. But when the human being gets a realization of emptiness, and I would say for now, for the human mind, there's two types of meditation a human being can do. These two types of meditations are kind of like zooming in and zooming out of reality. What that means is I have an ability to, in some sense, be nothing in the outer realms, and it took me a while through a very unique realization to recognize I can also be nothing in my inner realms. But in the society, in the world we find ourselves now, I find the situation is that people do not have a contentment, a psychological contentment with the void and non-existence, but it's in the cards for everybody. That means, believe it or not, we are all candles. That means at some point the light of the candle will end, and the candle will wonder, with the light I had, how many other candles did I light up? Do you know, where did the world story go? There is a quote I want to read for the audience. It is a quote by Plutarch. And this quote, I will tell you, is one of the most incredible quotes in the English language, and it so far for me is one of the best quotes I have found on trying to explain really the role of our intelligence on this planet. Plutarch says, the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled. The mind is not here to be a jar where we're endlessly putting sensory images in it. Do you know? The mind is here to, in some sense, animate, to happen. You know, it's as if you're alive once in the format of, in this elemental format, and you're like, okay, universe, you know, 4.5 billion years of evolution, you got me to the office. Now, what is the great work of the species? You know, we are in the evolutionary office. I would say that this is why our species values even the concept of love, you know. Because emptiness is everywhere. Love has been the greatest strategy of a temporary consciousness in the void to preserve itself. You know, a truth will be shouted in the streets in the future, that we will realize every person is experiencing the mind as the whole mind, meaning every person is technically being a behind the scene god of their own energy. One must treat their mind as honorably as they're treating their body. If we honor the body's life, which is to some degree physical survival, even the species reaches a point where it's like, why have I been surviving this whole time? Like, why did I try so hard to survive? And that's where the second life ignites. That's where the life of your mind begins to activate on this planet, and the creature begins to notice that its work is not only physical, and then you realize how much you have the work of your eyes goes way beyond elements. You know what it is? It's as if we are a universe that has awakened to itself through fragments. And it's more and more realizing that it's like a drop in an ocean rather than an iceberg in the ocean. You know, sometimes I have poetic conversations with the logos, and what that means is through a context of silliness, I just look at this world and I'm like, world, what do you want? You know? Like what is it that nature wants from us? And the moment I realize it can't want a noun because it moves too much, and it can't want a verb because there is emptiness. So the universe cannot want anything from man, which is another way of saying nature is fulfilling its purpose by being here. Many people may think that in this life they were just a passenger in the flows of karma, you know, as if 8 billion creatures are standing on the bus and there are no seats, no chairs to sit on, right? So we have to sort of endure our existential journey. Do you know, I've had moments in this life where my mind's life has been destroyed. When I say destroyed, I gotta explain this properly. There has been moments where my attention has been shifted by myself towards the lesser, and there has been times where others have shifted my attention to the lesser. When it has come to my attention being shifted towards the greater, the true greater, I would say that others did not point me. I'm one of those human beings who can say that I heard what other human beings had said, but I noticed there was something they could not say. You know, there's this quote, I don't remember who said it, but it was like the silence of someone speaks louder than their words. A person's silence speaks louder than their words. That means sometimes it's not what is being said that needs to be criticized, it is what is not being said. It's like we have to live a life as an object until we notice the subject, then live a life as a subject inside the object, then live a life as a subject free from beyond the object, you know, free from the object. That means you live the life of an independent subject, and then beyond living the life of an independent subject, the person is piloted by the unknown. Beyond human life, there is nothing human left. That means in the conscious waking state is our rare limited access to the human idea. I would like to read a poem. So in 2015, I wrote this poetry work called My Solaris, Solaris. And I want to read for you the 7th poem I wrote from this poetry collection. And the 7th poem is titled The Mystics Have Come. And so a mystic, the simplest way to, in like an instant, explain a mystic to someone is that the mystic is the lover of the unknown. It is the rare human being who has not only loved the knowable universe and its potential, but has also learned to love the unknown, and that means totality of freedom beyond subjective preference. Being is enlightenment. So anyways, the mystics have come. This is the poem I'm going to read for you. The mystics have come to save the universe. Okay, let me find a nice song, actually. There's a song by Hammock known as God Send Us a Signal. And it's an incredible song. I'm going to play it in the background while I read this. Alright. 4 minutes should be okay. Let's go. The mystics. The mystics have come to save the universe from itself. The love of truth is an awareness of the bliss in being within the ultimate moment where all happens. So I'm going to read that again. The love of truth is an awareness of the bliss in being within the ultimate moment where all happens. The flight of our world is a moment with its own self-existent glare. You may doubt this line, but the sun shall testify. We are all bright objects in the sky. But who sees the seer of all things? Can the mirror reflect on itself? Who has held the door open for existence? Charming as it may be, if you're in your head too long, you will get sick of everything. There's a space between the word everything. Caesar really needs to eat the Caesar salad in his time machine. We're not just an extraterrestrial projection that seems to be from a divine projector. Love is so now that any other moment is jealous of the rippleless pond reflecting the beauty of its own mind. Not even thunder can strike you when your true nature is found within all that is lost. Even Hercules sympathized with Luke Skywalker. When family shows were seen again, you have one family, and its name is existence. That's the end of the poem right there, but that is the level that human beings need to be. We are such advanced moments of intelligence where we live for existence, not just our prejudice selection out of this totality. It's all or nothing, go big or go home, and now this is being implemented on a universal scale. That means 8 billion people will stop being 8 billion people for one moment and be like, whoa, we're in the middle of nowhere. Everything is being kept in our attention, and how is it being kept has to do with the free will of your eyes. That means if there's a door that's unlocked but the person thinks it's locked, and the person has this conviction they don't need to look at the door again, then they are trapped in that room by choice. That means when there is an opportunity for advancement, instantaneous, I shouldn't say you take the opportunity, you just march. In some of the talks, I summarized 2 words that this universe would be saying. If this whole universal sector, intelligent universal sector could say something, or even the planet could say something to human beings, I feel it would be two words, and it would be these two words that say, go forth. That's it. That is the ultimate teaching. That is the final enlightenment. You go forth into the unknown. No past, no future, no present. Whatever is being done is being noticed to be, and in that instant of being, from Brahma Loka beyond, God never had children. Beyond the language threshold, the species is not going to be a thought. So we should enjoy our lives. It's a rare luxury to be an ignorant human being. I'm gonna read. There is 2 people watching, and there's 1 like on the video. So I'm gonna see if there's a poem by the number 21, and I'll see if I can read that. I don't know if there's 21 poems in here, but let me see. Oh yeah, there is. Okay. So poem 21 is titled this is from the book I wrote called My Solaris. All these books will soon be published online. So the title is Hallucinating on Yourself, and the poem says, some people don't need drugs to change the world before they change. How can the immortal caterpillar trust the unknown butterfly's wings? How does knowledge fly into the unknown? Our engagements are all passing us by. All actors will fade once the stage breaks. How can time and space turn into the wings of chaos and order? All worlds are present from one point. The greatest appreciation is self-awareness to your moment. What is giving me an eternity to confront? And that's how the poem ends. It ends with a question. What is giving me an eternity to confront? Why has an endless system appeared to itself? That is one of the great questions, and why philosophers will never, till the end of time, there will be a philosophical vision of life. The world may change from valuing subjective life at certain phases of its history more than objective life. Back in the day, life was tough, so they didn't travel a lot, so their lives were really internal, Now people's lives, of course now it's Corona, but I'm saying in the era that we're living in, right, we can go, it's like we can do so much more in the outer realms, so there is less attention to the inner realms. Now the social system is designed to make the person endlessly perceive the outer realms, and especially as a fixed idea. That means there is a reason that nations are declared. There is a reason there is constitutions, laws, and definitions. Even the dictionary, you could say, is linguistic law. And so the reason why we need to write it down, for example, to write meaning down on paper, is because law is actually an abstract consideration. It's like something put by the inner realms on the outer realms, but it's something that all the inner realms need to abide by in order to function properly in the outer realms. Because oh my god, my laptop's battery's gonna end, guys. Hold on. Okay, I'm back, and so is my laptop. I wanted to I guess in some general manner in this episode, point to how our management, how we walk behind our eyes, will suggest how the species keeps walking in the outer realm. A global internal reform. That is the solution to man's suffering in the outer realms. That means we all need to start looking at the same significance of realism. The mind's life cannot be controlled. That's one thing I would say, because the mind is not an object. An object a person can control. You can drive a motorcycle, you can control it. But when it comes to your mind, which it is in some sense not a object, it's just this space of phenomenology. You can only direct it with attention. That means when it comes to moving your mind, there is no body to move. There is just concentration and this ability to zoom in and zoom out. That means concentration meditation and emptiness meditation. We have an ability to have a single pointed experience of reality, or to have a multiple pointed experience of reality. Something I've been developing is that I tend to explain the dimensions of our universe numerically through the symbols of 0, 1, 2, and then infinity. So these 4 symbols, I feel they pretty much capture the philosophical, fathomable domain of consciousness. But another way I was thinking of explaining it was that it's as if awareness, intelligence, or space is like an empty piece of paper. And then consciousness is like somebody drew a dot. Somehow a dot was drawn in this empty piece of paper. Then and that dot managed to be conscious of itself, so technically its reflection was dual. That means, let's say there's a person in a world, born into a world where there is no one in that world, but there is a mirror. And this person has never experienced, they just teleported, and let's say they don't have any knowledge of the realm, so what that means is it's like, I don't know how to say it. It's as if, even if there was no other person, this creature would see its shadow, it would see its reflection in a pond, its reflection in ice. It would see something of itself that would make itself see another. That means it's like, even when a person wonders, how did Carl Jung, come up with the idea of a shadow, and you can totally see he was just walking on a sunny day and he just noticed his own shadow and he wondered about it, and there you go. Genius finds us in simple moments. A person's shadow sounds separate from them, but is actually from them. That means our suffering has to be self-generated, or who else is generating its meaning? That means it's as if on one level we want to say we're creatures that have free will, on another level we're like, oh man, we're suffering so much, hardship and whatever. So who is owning the meaning of the hardship? That means suffering, when we wonder about the owner of suffering, we come to universal intelligence. If we consider space to be the empty page, the form, the body being a single dot, the mind, which in function language, where is it? The mind that is a space where language lives in. It's like a line. It's like a dot. So pretty much I'm explaining existential evolution through a dot. First an empty page, a dot, then a line, then we have a plane. A plane is in some sense 4 lines, which means it's as if like 4 dimensions in 1 dimension. Now a plane, what happens is when lines join to create the plane, planes will join to create in some sense a 3-dimensional object. So what it is it has been a shift of evolution, not only due to where the biological evolution carried us, but to also how the interpretation of the universe just directed the person's energy. There's moments in my talks where I am giving the talk and the talk goes on auto cruise, and in my inner realms I am just like space, watching myself. And in those moments when the person can selflessly be present, the universe, its meaning arrives. That means it's as if truth is everywhere, but you can only see it humorously when there is no self to see it. Because that's the only way where you can be everything at once to know everything at once. What we can do with the mind's life is to implement a strategy where we say we try to find in the outer realms an approach that serves the body and the mind, and we try to find in the inner realms an approach that serves both the mind and the body. And if these two strategies, one for the inner and the outer, where it's as if it's this compassionate approach where all dimensions of the system begin to actually look at each other. We are all of the same similar existential design. We're all like, skin encapsulations, and there's a skeletal structure at work, and various systems of the anatomy, your nervous system, your cardiovascular system, just various ways that intelligence is just being preserved as one moment. So what this means is we are that rare moment in history where individuals realize they are collective. There was this very astonishing video where, how children, when they're young, they make paper cups. Like, I remember as a kid, like, I tried it, but it didn't work, where you would connect a rope to 2 cups and, like, you would assume, like, you're hearing what the other person's saying. But because the rope wasn't long enough, you couldn't tell if from the other side of the room you were here. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that this person connected the bottom of two cups together and pressed that against the beehive, and suddenly it was like the bees were all talking. The bees on a micro level were not all making the same sound. We look at bees and we're like, they're all going buzz, you know. But in reality, every moment of existence has a freedom to, in its expression, be the generation of a language or a world. You know, it's no longer self-management, it's no longer self-realization, it is world realization. World realization means the self realizes it is the world, you know, rather than the world being the self. Because every person in the inner realms, you can step into heaven instantly. But to build it in the outer realms, that is the fascination. I want to go into a quote tunnel of the word mind as a theme, and I want to read some quotes on what people in history, how human beings have been born, and they have wondered about what they are, pretty much. I mean, that is the mind, when we wonder about the mind. So anyways, I'm going to enter the quote tunnel. A quote that I shared early on from Plutarch: the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled. That means don't treat the mind as a storage device, but treat it as, in some sense, an instrument that once mastered, you can play it in ways that you have never played before. Pretty much, you can implement, like, it's not even improv, it's flight into the unknown sky, you know. F. Scott Fitzgerald says the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. And guys, I would say inner realm piloting is just the attempt of human beings to see how advanced the expression of concentrated attention is. Like, we just want to see if the human being was a Ferrari, how fast this Ferrari can go, right? And that is like the ultimate revolution, a revolution of an inner nature. I have a very knowledgeable cousin by the name of Vijak, and once he told me something in the lines of, he was sharing the Sufi wisdom, Sufi quote, and he tells me, he who knows his devil knows his God. And for him, it had a sort of, I don't know, imagery. But for me, the moment I heard that sentence, it was as if the person who has observed duality has understood oneness. That is it. In any moment, you can observe duality and be oneness. You know what I mean? It's as if like the person realized we're all God. Like Alan Watts, he said that in the West, you wake up and say, "Oh my God, I've realized everything is God." People would be like, "Hey man, you know, maybe go rest a little, you know, go, you know, relax a little, you know." You know, they ignore it. You know, it's ridiculous. But in the East, for example, in India, if you go and say, "I realize I'm God," everybody's going to be like, "Yeah, we all know it too." You know what I mean? Like, it has less of a value. You know, ideas are kind of like currency. Their value is different in different cultures. That's something I hadn't considered. Not only Our eyes are unique, and every person is not functioning through their inner realm, trying to understand the outer realm. Your mind, something important, I would say. This is not something like I've received from the logos, it's something from experience. That deep down, what the person feels is true is what karma is listening to. Karma is just the effect of existing. But to discover the cause of existence, to wonder about how something is prior to something having to be done in a certain way. You know, in certain metaphysical circles and traditions, I would say back in the day, they in some sense they saw a God superior to time. But I think in today's world, we cannot fathom a God superior than time. All our ideas are existing in time. To have an idea out of time means an idea that never changes, so it's immortality of conception, right? And that's the problem with absolutism. What that means is those people who want all of life to fit into a certain belief, into a limited belief, they don't realize they are like ignoring 90% of the realm. And out of this 90%, I would tell you maybe like 80% of it is unknown. We know nothing as a species. And when I tell you we know nothing, that means like all professors in universities, like I finally understood why they're nervous. Because language is man-made. Our understanding of the world is man-made. That means we think that there's facts and there's non-fiction, but our comprehension of this non-fiction is through a fiction. And the difference between fiction and non-fiction is that non-fiction is a photograph. Fiction is a film. So if we entertain reality as a fiction, that means it could be anything, and we have to, for the first time as a species, wonder what do we call something that could be anything. And some people are like, should we call it God? And I would say we can't, because that word already has too many types of attention linked to it. Excuse me. This microphone was on mute, unfortunately. In wondering about our mind's life, we notice that objects break, but what happens to a mind when the body is dismissed? This is perhaps something where we as the human temporary creatures should look into as a species. And I feel the conclusion is that most people feel it's dismissal. But if the realm is multidimensional, it could mean that energy is living multiple lives, and when one life out of the multiple gets dismissed, all the other realms in some sense have more room. So sometimes in life, if we become immortal, we become a burden to not only ourselves but the species. So immortality is not the aim, but just the endless opportunity of the update experience. We are alive. We are alive just like we have two eyes that see the same moment. The mind and body is happening. So what it is a symbiosis between dimensions, and we are the first animal on this planet that can notice it. It's as if we are the first animal that lifted its head out of water, and all the other species have not gotten there. Dogs and cats have a head start, but pets have a head start because they are exposed to human activity, and they're the witness behind the eyes of the brain, and not the eyes of the brain, but I would say it's like the consciousness updates in accordance to what it sees. It's like we see this as an effect in history. It probably has a term that I don't know, but like what it is that when somebody goes to the epitome of a system, all those in that same system suddenly notice that it can be done. When they notice it can be done, the life force has an outlet now, right? And so the aim is no longer, who has the better ideological costume. It is as if what is the most efficient, instantaneous strategy to reality. That means if we could put heaven in a sentence, what would that sentence be? I would say that sentence would be earth is inside heaven. We are truth dreaming. We are the dream of truth, pretty much. And for the quote tunnel, I'll read a few more quotes before I end. Leah LaBelle. Work hard for what you want, because it won't come to you without a fight. You have to be strong and courageous and know that you can do anything you put your mind to. If somebody puts you down or criticizes you, just keep on believing in yourself and turn it into something positive. I mean, sure, that's a strategy, but another better strategy is to roar directly at the design. That means when we look at life as a designer, there is no emotions, and we're just responding to just the content, the direct content of the moment. But if the inner realms move faster than the outer realms, the person will feel as if like everything becomes divine. So you can pretty much say divinity is when your mind's life, that second life, is functioning faster than your body's life. So your body feels it's in the presence of the greater. But if the body slows down completely, something unique happens, which is this is the whole aim of meditation, to take the seer, to take the sadhu towards, the happiness of samadhi, the bliss. That means there are states of mind attainable in this realm where, inner peace is just, the frosting on the cake, What you will find is union. And union means, imagine a human being in an alien world, and that human being suddenly sees other human beings and feels at home. There was this incredible narrative, I forget its name, The Promised Neverland, And so, imagine human beings seeing human beings in an alien world and suddenly feeling like they have found their lost family. Something like that. And I feel that the union that meditation provides is where you notice we are employed by the forces of nature. This is why physics is so important. And physicists, when they teach science classes, they don't allow the modern context of the realm to connect to the ideology. You know what it is? It's like all our animalistic violence is being transmuted into an inner urge of discovery. That inner urge of discovery is the best place to, in some sense, for the person to find truth. It's like a counter strategy to anger even. The person is angry, then the person's like, oh man, I'm angry. Instead of breaking something or, being destructive in the outer realms, the person uses their anger to get rid of their anger. So what that means is the person gets angry at themselves rather than the other person. This is, I think, a level of politeness mastery that the masters of politeness. Every life matters, and our inner life matters. Based on how pleasant the universe is being watched by our intelligence, that's the outcome. And I will tell you that as pilots of consciousness, as advanced intelligence, how we pilot in every situation is that we look at the chess move it makes. As if the world takes a step, then we take our step. So what that means is there's no more knowledge in accordance to systematic belief. There is just a living world happening, and you're riding its waves. I'm telling you, creativity and imagination, those concepts are a distraction. Elon Musk has said this incredible quote where he's like, if they make you ask the wrong question, they don't have to worry about your answer. And I feel the concept of imagination and this view that we are thoughts has been a distraction, where it has been literally, we have, we are biting the void. And every person, the moment, this is very key, that the moment you stop, you just like how you would put a cup of tea on a table, you go and find a moment in this life where you just sit down, just super still and silent. And it's not like you have to be in a specific meditation pose, even though in yoga, it's encouraged that you keep your spine straight. You just go sit down wherever you are, and the whole point of this is not to get enlightened or anything. The whole point of this is to just watch what happens to your mind when your attention, when the body doesn't move, the mind doesn't get distracted by the body. So reality is not endlessly forced to be materialistic. So when the person is super still and silent, and they've literally placed themselves like an object on this earth, they will start noticing their mind move. Now, something that many meditation people who teach meditation in society get wrong here is that they think you have to not have thoughts. That's not the case. You know, it is, what they're saying is true, but that's like level 7, and they're not explaining all the other levels to level 7, for example. Right? So the whole point is not to try to be Buddha, you know. the aim of it is to just sit down and watch and perceive how your unique DNA has gifted you with a view of the world that no one else has, and you begin watching your mind. And this is that cool thing where I would say, where the job of the outer guru is done, all the outer gurus throw the towels, you know, like they retire. Why? Because the people have reached a point where they're like, why was there an outer guru in the first place? So the person could know more about their own mind, which means you have to find the inner guru. That means it's as if the teacher is just pointing. You know, now some teacher has brought a mirror and is teaching people a mirror, like, you know, and people are looking in this mirror, and the profundity is the self-reflection, you know. The inner guru means you start trusting your mind's life, and when you trust it, opportunities of its expression arise. When you trust those and implement, then at some point, the next phase beyond poetry is witnessing the poetry of the moment, which means right now, if you were to in an instant just notice all your sensory perception, the domain of your sensory perception, in the stillness and silence of the body, the mind begins to dance, to show its own dance, to abide by its nature. And then I think that would be a thing where shamans, I'm like, this is my experience, but I think I think this is what has been happening with the divinity of shamanism, is that instead of there being a shaman who contacted the gods or the ancestors, there was just force ultimately behind every symbol of meaning. So the unteachable is everything. That means you can teach things in reality, but everything, that to absolutism, you know, absolutism is a great lift-off platform into, I would say, beyond the language threshold. You know, something strange I would say, where I think no one has ever said, a strange advantage in being selfless is that you notice how much of your life, your attention was just occupied by yourself, and how big the world is and how much of its events require a sort of reservation of a wild instinctual judgment. That means we have to act 10,000 years ahead of how we are living now. Just attempt in our inner realms to see if 10,000 years ahead how the curve of progress would go. Do you know? If when we live in the future in our inner realms, the outer realms has a comparative endless update. And I'm telling you, if the person had enough energy, there could be a philosophy that is never completed. But because we have to go, the person, we oscillate between the conscious and the unconscious, we can say a person has a philosophy. That means imagine somebody, an immortal being, giving you an explanation of their philosophy. That immortal being's explanation of philosophy could go till the end of time. So you see, language is a technology, and we as a species have to decide how it's going to be a part of our lives and how much it's going to define us, and how much we right now, like there's some people, in Wall Street, you can say they look at Amazonian tribes and you're like, look at what level these people are living, But in the same way, we, in a sort of classified narrative of the world, the primitive civilizations had, the primitive tribes had on their face, that paint for us is ideology. Everybody's face is painted with different ideologies, which different experiences have in some sense provided, the canvas. I'm going to read actually one more poem, and I'll just end the talk. I think the talk's going on for too long, and the audience is probably like, you don't say. So I'll read poem 13. It's called Tears of the Heart. And by the way, guys, these are mystical poems written in a playful context at the same time as they're written seriously. So anyways, Tears of the Heart. Drink your beer with a bear just to see a drunk bear is no one to drink with. Why drink when your thirst is from elsewhere? Can nature hurt itself, or is the moment changing with itself? So many songs have been written by men who thought they saw beyond thought. For when ants travel through the valley that is your palm, the ego may think it's a god. But your task is greater than your idea of greatness. Do not forget you are God within God in the eyes of man. May the women of this world kiss the divine, not just the face of a man. The universe has many love affairs. Be free beyond conception. That means beyond even the attachment of emotional truths. In yoga, they use an incredible metaphor. They say this world is like a dream and illusion, in the same way where we look at a rope and we think it's a snake, right? In yoga, they would say the person who hasn't noticed the snake is the rope, they are in some sense bound by the conditions of the simulation that endlessly generate fear. So man's greatest revolution against the void was to find a state where acceptance was the transcendence of the individual. And acceptance of what? The acceptance of this philosophy, I would say the coolest philosophy on earth, called worldism. And the reason I've coined this is because the world can just be the world. That means space for a limited time. As long as human beings are around, there is a need for gods. That means if people, sometimes I think people should want there to be gods in this world. Why? Because if there's gods, they need their creation. That means if the void of extinction comes, for example, the God that created us is in some sense tackling the universal law, And this is of course abstract. This is more I would say, theological consideration, but oh, and there's another poem. I'm going to turn the music off for this. This poem is number 15 from My Solaris. It's titled, Where Does Thought Come From? So that's the title of the poem. Where does thought come from? So it begins. Actually, I'm going to put a song. I can't. Where does thought come from? So the poem begins. Where does manifestation introduce herself to man? Is duality enough to look at existence and understand? What makes the home of homes a place to be? Where is the value of your life really? The world is boundless when omniscient friends are always at your gathering. The soul of the world is a moment unborn. Ask yourself, where are you until you see dawn on you? Every fascination is void, so you realize you are truth's keeper. Be so free that the constellations become meditative when you remember you are all-seeing. Yeah, that's it. Be free that the constellations become meditative when you remember you are all-seeing. So that's one of the perks of being everything, There is no longer a need to see. You are all-sight, I feel these states of mind are definitely accessible to the human being because there's so much unknown. Like if we knew exactly what was going on and then something fluctuated from that, then it would be easier to doubt, the transcendental. But because we don't know and everything's unknown and language is self-made in the void, we have to, it's as if we accepted too soon a civilization. Now we have to update civilization, aim for civilization 2.0. In my science fiction work, I have kind of tried to animate my vision of an advanced civilization. And I would say the future, the future is where the most attention goes. The future can be anything. That's I would say, the freedom of the inner space one finds when they think about their future. They don't know what's going to happen, so it's as if like the probability is weak of their own expectation of the future. Imagine in 3,000, I shouldn't say 3,000, let's say in 600 years from now, imagine humanity revolutionizes through a shift in the awareness of the species. And in some sense, all nations, their flags become part of like, the museum. And in some sense, there is one flag for the whole human species, for civilization 2.0, and that flag would be in some sense a sky where there is a sun shining, there is a castle on the clouds behind, like in front of the sun, and there is a whale flying in the sky, And so the whole notion of this is of man's interstellar relationship and the emergence of the role of the legend of the castle in the sky. I am telling you, this is like, even you can say princes and just people back in the day, like in royalty, like you could totally imagine the king like looked at the clouds and it's like, what if my kingdom was up there? You know what I mean? So the legend of the castle in the sky has been brewing, but ultimately it means we inhabit 3 dimensions properly as a species. Anyways, guys, thank you for listening. This episode traveled far, And when there is no self in the moment can never get tired, no longer has even a sort of health, so nature administers the karma of your body. You can say people can even start lifting off from their body. It's as if like our consciousness was downloaded, experientially into the brain of an evolutionary animal. And now, as we transition beyond, it's literally like the consciousness is being downloaded to something else. And just like how a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, what actually happens is all the cells of the caterpillar as an organism inside the cocoon begin dying. But the last cell of the cocoon, the last cell of the caterpillar becomes the first cell of the butterfly. So the whole thing, like a phoenix, the whole caterpillar pretty much dies and one cell remains, and then that one cell, like a phoenix egg, resurrects into the butterfly, for example. So what I'm saying is like there's so many types of intelligence happening on this planet, in this world, that freedom definitely is a choice when there's an infinite landscape. So thanks for listening, and I'll be on Discord for maybe like 10 minutes for those interested, in case this episode, I don't know, people have a question about it. Thanks for listening, fellas. And sorry, before I actually end off, if I say the mind is the second life, I would say the witness of the body and the mind is the third life. And if people say, Mr. Within, is there a fourth life? I'll be like, it's a count as much as you want. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Namaste.